Hello, everybody. Pop culture curator here. So good to see you all. I know this is a little unexpected. I was hoping to do this stream last night, but I got busy, and I'm sorry I sound like I'm out of wind. It's been running around the house doing a lot of chores today and trying to catch up on my breath. And the first thing I want to do is I want to say hello to the chat. It looks like we've got some people that have already been waiting. So good to see you, Phantom Boomer. Phantom Boomer says hi, Pop. Hello, Phantom Boomer. And hello, Lemon Pie. So good to see you, Lemon Pie. And it looks like everybody's saying hello to each other. Gorilla. Gorilla will be coming along shortly. He's having a stream right now of Schindler's List. And he's going to be stopping in whenever that finishes. It started about an hour ago. And I imagine that movie's probably 2.5 hours, probably. So he probably won't be here for another hour and a half, 2 hours. If this stream goes that long, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I did drop a link in the chat if anybody wants to join me on the panel. And if you're curious or not sure what the subject is, I'll relay it to you. I'm going to read out the description. In fact, I'm going to put a... bear with me here. I'm a little slow. I'm going to put I'm not sure what you call it, but where you give credit to somebody, because there's a website out there I've been kind of mentioning off and on during some of my streams. And I told you guys that I would be covering it eventually. And some of you seem interested. I don't know if anybody's interested at all or how many people, but I thought I'd cover it. And it's a website that's been on the internet for many years. The guy's done a lot of research regarding famous Hollywood celebrities, actors, comedians, singers, all that kind of stuff. And it's not going to be the usual news that you can find on Google or inside autobiographies, or if you look at their Wikipedia. This is going to be stuff that you usually don't hear unless you hear it. Let me explain this. Basically what we're going to be covering is, for example, tonight we're going to cover Marilyn Monroe. And we'll go a little bit in depth on how she passed away. And we're going to show her death certificate, the house she lived in when she passed away, and the bedroom she lived in when she passed away. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover famous celebrities, like I said, but I'm not going to be covering their life because we all know about their lives and what they've done and history, whatever movies they've done or jokes they told. What I'm going to talk about are their final moments, how they passed away, where they passed away, what locations. I'll show pictures. As you see in the title, it says not for the squeamish. And there's a reason why I put that in there, because there's going to be some cases where we're going to show dead bodies. Some of them died tragically, some not. But what I'm going to do is I'll pull up a name of lists on this website, and then I will let you guys pick names. So I'll be, for those of you that have been around, this website is old, like I said, so it's going to have a lot of classic old celebrities, like everything from like Laurel and Hardy up until, I'm not sure how recent it's been updated. I haven't been on the website in a while. But people are free. Excuse me, my back is killing me. I got to take an oxy. I've been moving around doing all the wrong things today. But I'm going to let you guys throw out suggestions. You guys will see the directory with all the names and the table of contents. And I'll let you guys throw in suggestions if there's anybody you want me to look up. And I will cover their death. And I want to put... drink some water. I want to put credit inside the description down below of the website because I don't want to get stricken on YouTube. I don't know what it's called. but I don't want to feel like I'm trying to rip off this guy's material because he's got a fantastic website. I want to give him full credit. So tonight you'll hear me mention this website many times. I just can't remember the words right now in my mind. I'm going to put courtesy of. There it is. So I just put it in the description. Hopefully it'll show up on your computer or phone or whatever you're on. And then it looks like we've got Ola Greg here. Hello, Ola Greg. So good to see you. Don't be a Gorn. Like and subscribe. Thank you, Ola Greg. Yes, and if you're watching this on the rerun, if anybody comes tonight or comes in later on and watch this stream, and they're thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Tonight's going to be a little off topic. We don't usually cover things like this, but it's something that I've always found fascinating, so I figured I'd bring it up and see what you guys think. Hey, Franco Walker, let me see. Oh, Captain Pinity's here. Let me get caught up on the chat. Captain Pinity said, who said that? Franco Walker says, take care, everyone, and much love to y'all. Thank you, Franco. Lemon Pie says, hey, Franco. And Phantom Boomer said, who said what? Oops. Let me show it. Ola Greg says, don't be a Gorn. Like and subscribe. Ola Greg says, night, Franco. Well, Franco, I'm glad you stopped by. And Phantom Boomer says, sleep well, Franco. All right, so I'm not going to waste too much of your time. Let's see if I can share the screen, and we're going to get started right now. And I'll kind of explain what's going on. If you're on a phone, you may find this kind of hard to read because I'm going to be reading some of the text and showing pictures. If you're on a computer, you may want to enlarge it so you can see what's going on. I'm not going to read everything verbatim because some of it's opinion, some of it's speculation, but I'm only going to cover I guess you could say the meat of the facts. And this is called findadeath.com. There's a couple websites that are similar to this, which I'll be covering tonight. And I'll be talking about them in detail. Find a Death, like I said, this is a website I've been going on since I think at least 15 years or more. And it's really expanded. They've added a lot more celebrity material on there. There's some things that I've seen before that I don't know if that are still on there because I was kind of checking it out earlier today before the stream. But what this guy does is he digs up all this dirt on celebrities that have passed away and how they passed away. Over to the right here, you can see an advertisement. This is Dearly Departed Hollywood, the Tragical History Tour. I've always wanted to take this. I never had a chance. But basically, if you go to Hollywood, you can take a tour. And this isn't like the regular tour where you go to see celebrities' homes and stuff like that. Dearly Departed Tour, what they do is they'll take you to houses where people died. For example, like it'll show Lucille Ball's old house and stuff like that. So over on the right, that's where you're going to see some of these links here. These are links that are similar. And I do recommend this website, everybody. If you get a chance in your own time, if you're interested in things like this, do check it out. After tonight, that is. And if I start scrolling down, these are some recent additions. There's going to be a lot of names on here you don't recognize. The older you are, the more you recognize, the more names. So we have David Cassidy, the singer, the guy from Partridge Family. The deaths of the cast of Star Wars. So it'll cover those that have passed on from the original Star Wars. Pugsley from the Addams Family grave opened on Halloween. And that covers Pugsley from the original Addams Family television series. Michael Jackson's death. And 1928, St. Francis Dam disaster ruins, hundreds perished. That's an historical event. I probably won't cover stuff like that. Judy Garland's new grave and surf music. I may cover that. Bela Lugosi death, Red Fox, stuff like that. So if I scroll down more, or if I go up higher, depending on how you look at it, I'm going to go to directory, and we'll start here. As you can see, it's in alphabetical order by the first name. So it starts off with the famous producer Aaron Spelling. And by the way, Gorilla's not here to help me with the chat, so I'm going to try to keep up to the best I can. Phantom Boomer said, "Who, Dad? Who say Dad?" When I said, "Who, Dad?" Limit Bice is probably at home washing his tights. Friday nights is Captain Infinity. Yes. No, it's Sunday. Lemon Pie says, "I use at home washing his tights and working synonymously." And Phantom Boomer says, "Friday night tights, Saturday night, tube top and platform shoes." And I don't know if there's any big YouTubers streaming tonight or not. Like I said, this is kind of a last minute thing, but we'll see what happens and if people show up. So anyway, to give you guys an idea of how this website works, I'm going to go straight to somebody that most of us know about. So I'm going to skip all the way down to, I figure the first one I'll cover is Marilyn Monroe. If I can find it. Come on, it was here. There it is, Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was born June 1st, 1926. She passed away August 5th, 1962. And a quote from her is, "Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul." And there's a picture of Marilyn. I'm sure everybody recognizes her. Most people do, at least. If you haven't, then where have you been? I think she may still stand as one of the most famous pinups in history. So, when I read the main paragraphs, that's going to be by the author of the website, findindeath.com. Oh, excuse me. I need to take some cough medicine. For years, people have requested that Marilyn be profiled on Pine to Death. I've always refused. Excuse me. Because she is so well documented. Just a quick online search will give you any information you could possibly want or need on this unfortunate woman. And it says since this week, August 2010, which means that's apparently when he posted this article on her. As of August 2010, it was the 14th anniversary of her death. In her 36 years, Marilyn Monroe had over 70 addresses. She is easily the biggest movie star of all time. If you walk down Hollywood Boulevard, you will see her presence everywhere, in supermarkets, on T-shirts, posters, plates, chocolate. There are some examples in the photo. Quote from Marilyn: "I've never liked the name Marilyn. I've often wished that I had held out that day for Jean Monroe, but I guess it's too late to do anything about it now." At this point, almost 6 decades have passed since the death of this beloved sex symbol, and she has morphed into an almost beyond the realm of comprehension icon. Her life and death fall into myth perpetuated by a cottage industry of licensing conspiracy books and attention seekers with tall tales. She becomes a little girl lost to new generations who believe that if somehow they had been her friend, she could have been saved. You can see all the images you want of her life and times here. This amazing dictionary has worked as a Bible for me over the years. Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1st, 1926. This is her birth certificate, actually her death certificate. So this is what I was talking about. If you want to look at this in detail, you might want to enlarge your screen. I don't know if you're on YouTube, if it'll let you zoom in, get more of the details. But I know it's handwritten, so it may not be very legible or easy to read. I hereby certify that I attended the birth of this child. So this is actually her birth certificate. It's marked deceased because she has since passed. But this is Marilyn Monroe's birth certificate. As you see her full name of child, baby Norma Jean Mortensen. So it's got her original name, and it's got her mother and father's name, the date she was born, and the time and date, June 1st, 1926. She was baptized as Norma Jean Baker at the Angelus Temple, possibly by Sister Amy Semple McPherson herself, a year before talking films became all the rage. A child of Hollywood, her divorced mother Gladys Monroe Baker Mortensen worked as a film cutter at RKO Pictures. There's a picture of the original RKO studios, which has been long since defunct, and it was purchased by, I think, Paramount. At 12 days old, baby Norma Jean was taken to live with a foster couple, Ida and Wayne Bolender, in Hawthorne, California. The deeply religious couple agreed to raise the child for $5 a week from Gladys. Gladys visited on weekends, and Ida Bolender informed the child that Gladys was her real mother. Her mother informed Marilyn that her real father was Charles Stanley Gifford, a salesman for RKO who resembled Clark Gable. There are stories that he later owned a dairy in Hemet, California, and once when Marilyn attempted to telephone him, he hung up on her. Mental illness, in other words, manic depression, schizophrenia, was rampant in Gladys' family. And when Norma Jean was briefly living with her mother at age 7, Gladys had a nervous breakdown. Norma Jean became a ward of the state, and her mother's friend, Grace McKee Goddard, became Norma Jean's legal guardian. Anne Grace became financially strapped and needed to send the 9-year-old child to the LA Orphans Home, which is now called Holly Grove, with a new main building. This is it. So that's what used to be the orphanage that Marilyn Monroe was in as a child for several years. Anne Grace visited on weekends and took Norma Jean to the movies. When their day trip was over, Norma Jean returned to the drudgery of the orphanage. Norma Jean said, "No one ever told me I was pretty when I was a little girl. All little girls should be told they're pretty, even if they aren't." Norma Jean knew she wasn't technically an orphan since her mother was alive, crazy and committed to a Norwalk, California asylum, but alive. This is when California had asylums. They don't anymore. Now they just release them on the streets or they're in jail. Norma Jean says, "At nights when all the kids were asleep, I'd perch on the dormitory windowsill and look across at the RKO water tank, now Paramount, with RKO in big letters and light shining like a Hollywood premiere. My mother used to work there. I'd whisper, 'Someday I'd like to be a star there.'" And there's a shot of, so that used to be the RKO water tower, which is now Paramount Tower. Anne Grace always told her she was going to be in the pictures. Gladys never called her daughter. However, she hindered permanent adoption of Norma Jean to wanting families by not signing final papers. Instead, Norma Jean was tossed to 12 foster homes and then settled in with Grace's elderly aunt, Anna Lower, for several years. Aunt Anna gave Norma Jean unconditional love and shared her Christian Science faith. It was Aunt Anna who gave bride Norma Jean away when she married Grace's neighbor, 21-year-old son Jim Doherty, in 1942. Norma Jean dropped out of high school in 10th grade at the age of 16 and married Jim to stay out of foster care when the Goddards moved across the country. Norma Jean invited the Bollanders to attend the ceremony, and they came. The reception was held at the Florentine Gardens in Hollywood. And this is what that building looked like. So this is where Marilyn Monroe was married. Within a year, Jim was shipped out to the Pacific with the Merchant Marines, and his bride was working on a wartime defense plant. A stable family life eluded her once again. Her unconventional childhood, in which she was reportedly sexually assaulted in various homes, left Norma Jean as an insecure, eager-to-please young woman with a slight nervous stammer. She was also quite lovely. She caught the eye of a factory photographer, and Norma Jean Doherty began her modeling career. Cheesecake was her specialty. She learned that she could use her sex appeal for a more exciting career and set her sights on becoming an actress. She wrote husband Jim to inform him that she was getting a Las Vegas divorce. She became a platinum blonde at Frank and Joseph's salon in Hollywood that was located here. So that's where Marilyn Monroe dyed her hair from brunette to platinum blonde. Sylvia Barnhart was her hairdresser. Marilyn, as she was now called, knew that there were plenty of older men in Hollywood willing to help an eager young girl rise from starlet to star. She was savvy and found the right ones, including old Joe Schenck, the Fox studio mogul, and Johnny Hyde, VP of the William Morris Agency. The latter paid for cosmetic surgery on her nose and chin. After several years of living at the Studio Club in Central Hollywood, near her old orphanage, and floundering in B films, Marilyn was now the flawless beauty in two hit 1950 films, All About Eve and The Asphalt Jungle. Marilyn didn't attend the premiere of the latter film, which was held at Grauman's Egyptian Theater, which is now Grauman's Chinese Theater. If she had seen her first husband, Jim Doherty, now on the LAPD, assigned to crowd control. The year 1952 brought several changes to her personal life. That August, Marilyn placed her mother Gladys in the Rock Haven Sanatorium in Glendale. And that's what it used to look like. Like I said, there's no sanatoriums anymore. Other residents of that rest home, quote rest home, over the years included Billie Burke. For those of you wondering who is Billie Burke, she's the one that played the good witch Glinda on Wizard of Oz, the blonde lady with the wand that gave Dorothy the ruby slippers. So other residents included Billie Burke, Flo Ziegfeld, and Frances Farmer. At any time, by the way, you guys, you're welcome to look these names up on IMDb if you want to, if you're a fan of older movies. This was also the year that Marilyn first went out with retired superstar baseball player Joe DiMaggio on a blind date at the Villanova restaurant, now called the Rainbow on the Sunset Strip. And that was the sign, Villanova. This is a sign still exists within the restaurant today. With a new contract with 20th Century Fox, Marilyn was ready for her big breakout year. That year was 1953 when she starred in 3 Technicolor hits: Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and How to Marry a Millionaire. While Marilyn was enjoying her first taste of superstardom, she received the news that her surrogate mother, Aunt Grace Goddard, had committed suicide with an overdose of barbiturates. Marilyn planned the funeral services, and Grace's remains were buried near Aunt Anna Lower in Westwood Memorial Park, where Marilyn would join them 9 years later. And I have been to Westwood Memorial Park, and I'll share some of that experience with you guys tonight. I've seen Marilyn Monroe's grave. I took pictures of it. That December, Playboy magazine debuted with this. Now remember, this is the first premiere issue of Playboy magazine, and it debuted with a centerfold of nude Marilyn on red velvet. Photos from the 1949 shoot for $50 cash for rent. The nude calendar photo shoot happened at Tom Kelly's studio with his wife acting as assistant. And there's the studio where she posed for the nude photos. I'm not going to show the nude photos, by the way. That's not necessary. And this is YouTube. Marilyn never denied she had modeled nude. In fact, she even made jokes about it. Her unapologetic tongue-in-cheek sexuality, coupled with her publicized rise to stardom from a sad childhood in foster care just made Marilyn more popular with audiences. Marilyn once said, "If you're going to be two-faced, at least make one of them pretty." Despite some bitchery from hypocritical prudes like Joan Crawford, Marilyn had many celebrity well-wishers, including co-star and former Fox studio Queen Betty Grable, who said that Marilyn was a shot in the arm for Hollywood boost. There certainly was nobody more famous than Marilyn Monroe that year. In 1954, Marilyn Monroe was married to Joe DiMaggio and tried playing housewife at homes in San Francisco and Beverly Hills. And this is her marriage certificate, I believe. This is 1954. Nope, it says divorce. This is her divorce paper from her first husband. It lasted 9 months. Marilyn wasn't about to give it the spotlight that she had waited for her whole life. And for as famous and successful as Joe was then, he was always going to be Mr. Marilyn. "It's not fun being married to an electric light," he said. During her time with DiMaggio, she had to endure the jealousy and resentment of her lesbian acting coach, Natasha Lightis, whom Marilyn Monroe had placed on the Fox payroll. Marilyn just wanted an acting mentor, not another possessive lover. She told Natasha, "Don't love me, teach me." As the couple was heading into divorce proceedings, Joe DiMaggio was having Marilyn Monroe followed by detectives to try to catch her being adulterous. On November 5th, 1954, DiMaggio, his buddy Frank Sinatra, and the private detective barged into the 8112 Waring Avenue building that they heard Marilyn was visiting. And this is the building. So they were hoping to catch her in the act. Instead, they raided the wrong apartment. Marilyn was visiting her friend Sheila Stewart in another unit, and a horrified tenant named Florence Cotts pressed charges. Flo eventually settled for $7,500 in damages. Marilyn Monroe once said, "Dogs never bite me, just humans." The next year, Marilyn Monroe left Hollywood to study acting in Manhattan with Lee Strasberg, who became a parental figure, along with his Yenta wife, Paula. Marilyn formed her own production company in search of better roles and married superstar playwright Arthur Miller in 1956. Marilyn said Arthur reminded her of Abraham Lincoln, part of an idolatry fetish she had for the 16th president. For a few years they were happy, and the Beauty and the Brain hoped to have many children, but it was not to be. Marilyn suffered a second miscarriage during the shooting of Some Like It Hot, 1959. Their marriage unraveled on the set of The Misfits, her final completed film, where Marilyn lost her marbles and Miller found his sanity, and set photographer Inga Morap, who would become his next wife. Joe DiMaggio had come to Marilyn's rescue on her final Christmas in 1961. They met up in Florida that February of 1962. "Thank God for Joe. Thank God," she told friends. Marilyn also rebounded from the painful Miller divorce from the help of pals Frank Sinatra, Peter Lawford, and an affair with Peter's brother-in-law, President John F. Kennedy. The pair met frequently at Lawford's oceanfront home. And by the way, Peter Lawford, he was an actor that he was considered one of the Rat Packs, but he wasn't really as well known as the rest of them. But there's a lot of tales that he would have some pretty wild parties at his house with drugs and everything. So it was a pretty happening scene back then, I guess. And that's Peter Lawford's old house. Marilyn was enamored with the womanizing JFK, to say the least. She said, "I think I make his back feel better," she told pals. Marilyn sang "Happy Birthday" to the president at his 1962 Madison Square Garden birthday gala, staged and directed by William Asher, who was the director of Bewitched, interestingly enough. To attend the JFK event, Marilyn had to defy the studio and skip town and her film production of Something's Gotta Give. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was a famous, you could look up the video of Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to JFK. As you can see, his video is private. I'm not sure if I can show it here without getting stricken. Marilyn once said, "I've been on calendars, but never on time." At the time, Fox was hemorrhaging money that year with Liz Taylor's Cleopatra, which was a huge bomb for the studio. And they were also fed up with Marilyn's tardiness. Something had to give, and it was Marilyn, not Liz. Fox informed Marilyn that she was fired, and they shut down the production. Summer of 1962 found the unemployed Marilyn living in her newly purchased, sparsely furnished Brentwood home. Her phone number at the time was 476-1890. That she was in the process of remodeling. Her closest companions were all on her payroll. Her publicist, business manager, physician, psychiatrist, and his brother-in-law, her attorney, and a patient babysitter. That's Marilyn's house, the last house she lived in. The only companion around the house she wasn't paying was her small white poodle from Sinatra named Math, short for Mafia, or Moth, I guess. Short for Mafia, so that was her poodle. On June 2nd, the day after her 36th birthday, Marilyn had an emotional breakdown. Dr. Greenson's son and daughter were summoned to cheer her. Marilyn said she felt old and wanted and used by people. She declared that her life wasn't worth living. In one of the better Marilyn Monroe books, Barbara Leaning's Marilyn Monroe, the author had access to Dr. Greenson's personal correspondence, and he diagnosed Marilyn as borderline paranoid addict. All summer, Marilyn was eating less, drinking more champagne, and totally relying on pills for insomnia. On Friday, August 3rd, Marilyn's Life magazine interview and pictorial was published. Marilyn Monroe appeared gaunt and tired in the photos, and the interview focused on her now troubled career. And I'm going to see where I am on the chat. I don't want to get too far behind, guys. Phantom Boomer says, pop culture, don't worry so much about the chat for now. Well, I'm still going to get caught up. I don't want to leave you guys behind, because if I let it get too far behind, it'll be impossible to get caught up. Captain Infinity says, well, maybe if someone in the chat had a nice cup of STFU, or if anybody wants to come on the panel and help me with the chat, you're always welcome. Phantom Boomer says, shh. Lemon Pie says, no big YouTubers are streaming. They're all under 6 feet tall. All right. Gap After Dark. Hey, Gap After Dark. Good to see you. Hey, Pops, Lemon Pie. Phantom Boomer, Franco Walker, Oiler, Great Captain Infinity. Hello. Oh, hello. Said Gap After Dark. And Phantom Boomer says, howdy, Gap After Dark. Lemon Pie says, Gap. Gap says, hello, all. Lemon Pie says, Captain. And Gap says, how are you doing your new place, Pops? I am hanging in there. I've got a problem with my lungs. I've got cancer. So I live upstairs. So when I go up and down the stairs, it kind of takes me a while to catch my breath. But I enjoy it. I like it. My roommate's a nice guy. Phantom Boomer says, I grew up in Norwalk, California. That institution was a hella big place because of the style of architecture. They always called it Stately Wayne Manor. Captain Vinny says, I'm going back to Cali. Cali's not fun anymore, unfortunately. Captain Vinny says, Marilyn Monroe was offed, and you all know it. There is rumors that she called JF. This is not on this page. This is just from my recollections. But there were rumors that she was having an affair with JFK and his brother Bobby Kennedy. And she was seeking attention, depressed, high, and drunk. And the night before she died, she called JFK and threatened to expose their relationship to the press, which was absolutely no-no because at the time JFK was married to Jackie Onassis. JFK begged her, don't do it, but she said she was going to do it. Next thing you know, they found her dead the next day. Phantom Boomer says George Reeves was bumped off also. Yeah, that one I don't know. George Reeves is, by the way, everybody, the guy who played Superman in the 1950s series. And I know the official, just like Marilyn Monroe, the coroner ruled it as suicide, but it's always been a mystery. And there are also rumors with George Reeves that he haunts the house that he passed away in. Okay, so back to Marilyn. The weekend all this happened was also the fifth anniversary of her first miscarriage with Arthur Miller. To make things more upsetting for Marilyn Monroe, Miller's new wife Inga was due to the have their baby daughter, Rebecca, within a few weeks. Marilyn had plenty of reasons to be depressed. Dr. Greenson spent the day with her after she had complained about a miserable sleepless night. She was distraught and emotional and appeared to Greenson as somewhat drugged and unsteady. She wanted to go walk on the Santa Monica Pier, but Dr. Greenson talked her out of it. She decided to stay home with housekeeper Mrs. Murray. Marilyn spoke to former stepson Joe DiMaggio Jr. by phone that day. She also reportedly spoke with her hairstylist Sidney Gulleroff and told him, "I'm very depressed." She once said, "What do I wear in bed? Why, Chanel number 5, of course." Marilyn Monroe retired by 7 p.m. to her locked bedroom with her record player and her phone. She called Dr. Greenson around 7:30 p.m. to assure him that she was feeling better. And if I click on this link here, it'll show Marilyn's final timeline. Let's see where that takes us. Wow, this is a whole another page. It's more detail. This is more detail, hour by hour. This is looking at her bedroom window. This is why I recommend the website, you guys. You will spend hours and hours reading the details of all this. I don't know if you can see that page I just showed. But that's why I recommend this website. There's going to be a lot that I'm going to have to skip over if we want to cover a lot of topics tonight. Next day, she was found. Warning, dead pick. She was found dead from an overdose of about 25 Nembutal and a few chlorohydrate pills. 15 pill bottles were found nearby. Here's a smattering of them. So these are some of Marilyn Monroe's prescription bottles. You notice this is before they had childproof caps. Here's a picture of them taking Marilyn Monroe's body out of her house. Marilyn at the Pierce Brothers Westwood doors. Pierce Brothers Westwood Village removed the remains from the home and took them to Pierce Brothers Westwood Village. The coroner then dispatched 2 coroner employees to pick up the remains from Pierce Brothers Westwood Village and take her to the halls of Justice Coroner Office basement. Sending suicides to private mortuaries for examination by a deputy medical examiner was not uncommon in those days. It was an afterthought to order the body into the coroner's office. There's Marilyn Monroe in the hearse. She was placed in warning dead pick again. She was in the mortuary. She was placed in drawer number 33. Yes, that is her toe tag. I'm going to show you this. I got to change it just for a second. Bear with me here. There it is. Door number 33. That's a Marilyn Monroe split with the actual toe tag sticking out. All right, now back to what we were reading. An autopsy was performed. This is an actual post-autopsy photograph from Marilyn Monroe. Warning, it's pretty gruesome. This is the real deal, no mistaking it. This is a picture of Marilyn Monroe dead. Now, before I show this, I'm going to go to the chat. And I'm going to ask you guys, do you want me to show this or not? So please give me your reply in the chat. Some people might want to see it. Some people may not. So I'm going to let you guys decide. Unless nobody responds. Bannon Boomer says, not really. I've seen enough dead people. I know. We've got one running for president, or it's president right now. Okay. Since Bannon Boomer is the only one to reply, I'm going to take his word for it. But as you guys know, there's a link right here where if you click on it, there is a picture. So once again, on your own time, if you go back to this website and check it out, findadeath.com. You can look at these pictures. Besides, I don't want to get in trouble on YouTube anyway. The coroner ruled it a probable suicide as opposed to accidental overdose or homicide. Autopsy notes. Dr. Noguchi. Now, I want to explain this. Dr. Noguchi was a famous coroner in LA and Hollywood area for many, many, many years. The old TV show Quincy was based on him. He also did autopsies like on Natalie Wood when she drowned and several other celebrities. So he was well known. Dr. Noguchi went over every inch of Marilyn's body with a magnifying glass and found no injection marks. Had one been administered within 24 hours, it would have shown up. Had she been poisoned by injection, her death would have been rapid. Therefore, they would have found the toxicology evidence that they had. There was no capsule residue in her stomach because there didn't have to be. She didn't die suddenly. Therefore, the capsules had time to dissolve. There was no yellow dye from the Nembutal because there didn't have to be. 3 independent autopsy surgeons were questioned about the yellow dye in Nembutal deaths, and neither had seen it. The drug company, Abbott, that manufactured the drug stated that they had heard the theory as well, but there had been no study or scientific papers at the time to support it. And here's Marilyn Monroe's death certificate. And as you can see, the cause of death, acute barbiturate poisoning, ingestion of overdose. A 1982 reinvestigation by LA Coroner's Department and in 2003 independent study by Dr. Don Chamberlain for the Discovery Channel came to the same conclusions that Marilyn ingested the fatal overdose, which was consistent with the amounts available to her. The condition of her stomach and drug levels in the blood and liver are consistent with the idea she took the drugs through her GI tract and was alive for some period afterwards. There was no physical evidence of lung or heart trauma or inflammation of the colon to suggest the overdose was administered by direct injection or by suppository enema. It was estimated again that the excess of 25 pills taken in her locked room point to probable suicide as opposed to accidental overdose or homicide. This is it says right here, a few years ago, I had the amazingly good fortune to be able to interview Alan Abbott, one of the mortuary employees at the time of Maryland's service. So that's a picture of him. He worked at the mortuary that prepared the body for a funeral. When the family brought in the clothing for her, they didn't bring any panties for her to wear, since she never wore them in real life. Fortunately, someone at the coroner's office had the dignity to tear a sheet and make a sort of diaper for her. It was the only body I'd ever seen come out of the coroner's office that was not totally nude. Somebody was very respectful and did that for her. They also brought these funny little falsies. At the coroner, they made a Y incision. They cut the rib cage, and everything kind of caves in. I was helping the embalmer. The first thing the embalmer had me do was get rid of a horrible swelling in her neck. She died face down, so there was lividity. I had held Marilyn up on her side while the embalmer made a cut in the back of her neck and pulled all the skin very tight and sewed it up. To sew it, he had to cut some of the hair off and threw it in the trash can. He got her neck looking very good. When he got her dressed in this chartreuse poochy gown, she still looked terrible. Her face was still a mess. Mrs. Hamrock, who owned half of the mortuary, just had to come out to the mortuary to see Marilyn. We had just finished dressing Marilyn. Miss Hammock walked into the embalming room and looked at the body and said, "That doesn't look like Marilyn to me. Where are her breasts?" The embalmer said that an autopsy was performed on her, and that's why she was flat. We even used the falsies that the family brought in, but they were way too small. Mrs. Hamrock reached in and grabbed the falsies and threw them in the trash can. We'd put a bra on her because they brought in a bra, not panties. Mrs. Hamrock walked over to the cotton dispenser. Most mortuaries have them. And she began stuffing the bra so it was all filled up like it should be. She backed up, took a look, and she said, "That looks like Marilyn Monroe." And she turned around and walked out the door. The embalmer didn't feel qualified to do her hair and makeup, which is standard in mortuaries that the embalmer would do that. So Fox Studios sent over a wig box with the wig from the last movie Marilyn was working on. Whitey Snyder did her makeup. Alan continues. I was in my early 20s and I really wanted to get a souvenir, but I would have been mortified if the embalmer saw me doing something like that. As the embalmer was washing his hands, I never took my eyes off of him, but I walked over to the trash, reached down and grabbed the falsies and put them in my pocket. When I got outside, I took the falsies out. Some of the hair that had been thrown out earlier was squeezed between them. That's how I ended up with a lock of her hair. He still has it. I nearly cacked myself when he brought it out. And there's a picture, and when you see me circling with my arrow is a lock of Marilyn Monroe's hair from her body. Side story. People might wonder why Marilyn wore falsies at all. Alan Abbott told me that he asked Whitey Snyder himself. Whitey explained that Marilyn was 36 and her breasts were starting to sag a little. So she put on a bra, then put on a sweater. She would then put the falsies between the sweater and the bra, and it gave the illusion that she wasn't wearing a bra at all. Because you would see the bumps of her nipples. And there's a picture of her falsies. Sorry if this is more than you guys were wanting to see. Mr. Abbott sold her falsies and the original funeral program, but kept this copy. He still has that boutonniere he wore on that day. Excuse me. What a time to be doing a lot of reading when I don't have much voice. This is the business card that the night manager gave me and said, when you get here, the security won't let you in unless you show them this card. So this is the card he had to use to get in to see Marilyn. Joe DiMaggio made the decisions and the invite list. He paid the bill. All the funeral home had a strict 9 p.m. closing time. My wife asked me to take her to Westwood to see Marilyn. I called Pat and told her that I'd like to bring my wife up to see her. And Pat said, sure. And we went down to the mortuary. We got there at 9 p.m. and Joe was still there with his entourage. He stood at the casket and cried, then walked outside for a few moments. Then he returned and stood at the casket and cried again. Finally, it was about 11 p.m. And I said to Pat, what about this 9 p.m. curfew? Pat replied, I'm not about to go and tell Joe DiMaggio that he has to leave. Finally, they did leave. Al recommended they get security overnight because press was staking the place out for that picture. He went to Pinkerton and hired 6 armed uniformed guards to patrol the grounds, and they stayed around the clock for the duration. Pat Spinelli took a rollaway bed and spent the night right next to Marilyn to protect her from the paparazzi. Word was out that there was a $30,000 offer for a photograph of Marilyn in the casket. There's a picture of security. Marilyn's funeral was held on August 8, 1962. Funeral arrangements were made by Joe DiMaggio, her half-sister Bernice Miracle, and business manager Inez Melson. There were 31 invites and loads of press allowed on the grounds, but no Hollywood types. But for those friends to be alive, Dean Martin, Ella Fitzgerald, and several more were refused entry at the gates. During the service, Lee Strasberg read the eulogy. Alan Abbott was working the funeral. He was positioned at the door to check invitations for the funeral service. 30 guests attended the private service, which was one of the first to be held in this newly completed chapel, which I had been there and inside. A lot of celebrities are. Here's what's different about, I want to explain really quick about this cemetery. There's several cemeteries in the LA and Hollywood area with lots of celebrities all over, obviously. But what's usual is they all look like mostly like cemeteries where, you can look almost as far as the eye can see, and you can see houses and buildings in the distance. What's unusual about this cemetery is it's very small, and it's surrounded by skyscrapers. So it's like right in the heart of downtown. And it's very concentrated with practically all celebrities. Almost every grave is a celebrity. Most of the other cemeteries where people are buried, they're mixed with the general public. So if you're looking for certain graves, you have to really go looking for them or have a map. They have maps that you can get to direct you to their graves. But with this small cemetery, it's like inch per inch. It has the most celebrities than all the other ones. In fact, it was so new it had no drapery. So Fox sent set dressers over to make it look nice. Here's the inside of the chapel where they had the funeral service for Marilyn. Marilyn's open bronze casket with the champagne satin lining. Here's pictures from her funeral. She was placed on the platform in front of the group. This wooden platform here is where her casket sat. She was dressed in one of her favorite dresses by the designer Pucci. In fact, the very dress you see her in below also shed on a green chiffon scarf. Interesting to note, Marilyn owned several versions of this dress, which came with a matching belt. Whomever brought it to the mortuary, failed to bring the matching belt, which was recently on display here in Hollywood. So there's the belt that Marilyn Monroe used to wear with her dress. And there's with her dog Moth that she got from Prince Sinatra. And this is from the funeral. So if you were a guest at the funeral, this is the card they would hand out. Lee Strasberg delivered the eulogy. Afterwards, the casket was carried to the hearse waiting outside the door and driven 100 yards or so to Marilyn's wall crypt. Alan Abbott added that when the hearse stopped near Marilyn's crypt, the silence was deafening. They opened the hearse, and the second Marilyn's casket became exposed, the press erupted into an ocean of clicks and flashes. It was so out of control, you couldn't even hear Reverend A.J. Solden read the 23rd Psalm of the crypt, at the crypt. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And there's a picture of the entourage and Marilyn in the hearse. Abbott was a pallbearer, as was his business partner Robert Hast, hairdresser to the stars. Sidney Golaroff and Marilyn's makeup man and good friend Whitey Snyder. Judy Garland's Over the Rainbow was played as Marilyn was placed in the wall head first. And I've seen that grave. I took pictures of it. When Marilyn died, she was virtually flat broke, and her estate didn't start generating income until the early 1980s. Prior to her death, Joe DiMaggio loaned her $5,000, an amount which he also sued her estate for and received. I'll bet that paid for a lot of those flowers he had delivered to her crypt. For the record, the flowers were sent from the Parisian florist on Sunset. So it even has a picture of the florist where the flowers came from. DiMaggio had a standing order: 6 red roses with baby's breath, 3 times a week for 20 years. He was billed monthly. He gave the florist a cool baseball autograph to the Flower Man. Here it is, baseball autograph by Joe DiMaggio. As well, Marilyn had not paid numerous people on her staff for months. Whitey Snyder, her makeup man, had not been paid for his services for over a year. Marilyn's little Moth, the poodle, went to Sinatra's secretary. And that's them taking the poodle away. Poor Pooch. Once the image licensing money started pouring in for Marilyn Monroe in the 1980s, the estate beneficiaries were Dr. Marion Criss and various child welfare charities and Lee Strasberg. In 1999, Lee Strasberg's third wife, Anna, who has never met Marilyn, had an end of millennium sale of the Marilyn Monroe stuff she held in storage for decades. It went to Christie's, New York City for a huge auction. I saw a tour of this in London and got about a foot from the happy birthday dress, which was pretty amazing to see in person. Odd story. I was looking in the glass case at the engagement ring Joe gave her. And on the other side of the glass case was Mick Jagger looking in. Mariah Carey now owns the white baby grand piano that Marilyn Monroe treasured that belonged to her mother Gladys, who interestingly outlived Marilyn by 22 years. Fun facts. Marilyn's stand-in on the Misfits was named Evelyn Moriarty. She went on to double for Barbara Eden on I Dream of Jeannie and often played the back of her evil twin sister's head. Both Marilyn's housekeepers wrote exploited books about their time with Marilyn. Lena's trashy book talks about slobby Marilyn living with her grimy hair stains on her clothes and dirty plates piled up next to her bed. Marilyn helped break down racial barriers by getting her favorite singer Ella Fitzgerald booked at LA's The Macombo. Marilyn agreed to sit front and center for all shows if they booked her, which they did, and Ella was always publicly thankful to Marilyn. Marilyn's social security number was 563-320764. What Marilyn might look like if she were still alive, well, it's 20 years ago anyway. So this is a tab, though. That's a pretty bad aging photo of her. And here's a little bit about her singing. I want to try to get through this as quick as possible. Sorry this is taking so long for one person. But here you have a picture in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater that has her hand. It says Marilyn Monroe, gentlemen prefer blondes. And you can see her handprints and her shoe prints right here. She had very small feet. And by the way, I'm going to add this. In 2010, her Brentwood home went on the market for $3.6 million. This is up from the $900,000 price tag 15 years before. Crazy, Marilyn's bedroom looks much cheerier these days, but the bed is still in the same place. So that's Marilyn's bedroom and her bed. And apparently, speaking of, did you know, Anna Nicole Smith lived in Marilyn's house for a while. True story. Anna slept in the same bedroom. And there's photos from when Anna Nicole Smith lived there. And there's a picture with Anna Nicole Smith. And I'm not sure who the man was, because if I remember right, she married some old man. And it says, and they were both Playboy models. The thing they really had in common was being used, taken advantage of, shot on, and spat out. Some people are extremely disrespectful of her grave, which is bad juju. So that does happen. People will desecrate graves, write on them, scratch on them, all that crap. I understand the cemetery keeps a spare nameplate handy for this very type of activity. Hugh Hefner bought the grave next to Marilyn. And I can attest to that. When I went to visit and I saw her grave, this was before he died, but there was a sign that the one right to the left of her was reserved for Hugh Hefner, which means that's where he's at now. The guy above her was flipped over in his casket, so he'd be forever on top of Marilyn, facing her. And this is the guy who was above Marilyn. True story. His widow tried auctioning off the grave recently. In fact, there's been a lot of movement on that wall as of late. Marilyn was the first big name to be buried in West Memorial Park and is set a president in LA cemetery real estate. You can't get near her for less than $750,000. A grave which cost more than Marilyn was worth when she died. Everybody wants a piece of Marilyn. Marilyn once said, ever notice how what the hell is always the right answer? Rest in peace, Marilyn. Marilyn's autopsy, will, and divorce documents from her first marriage are available here at Celebrity Archive. This is a link that I'm pointing to. If you're interested in seeing that, I recommend that you check this website out. Once again, this is findadeath.com. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to check the chats. Lemon Pie says, back up, D. Martin, you punk. Entry denied. Can you imagine them turning down D. Martin and Ella Fitzgerald? Lemon Pie, that's how funeral employee address the public, or so I imagine they used to. All right. So that was Marilyn Monroe. There's Mama Cass Elliott from The Mamas and the Papas. Madeline Kahn. I don't know if you guys remember Young Frankenstein. Margot Kidder. She played Lois Lane on the movie Superman from 1978-79. If there's any names you guys want me to cover, please put them in the chat and I'll look for them to see if they're here in the directory. Let's do Lucille Ball next. Lucille Ball was born August 6, 1911. She died April 26, 1989. Just thinking about this woman makes me want to light up. She played one hell of a funny lady on screen. The jury is still out regarding her parental skills, but she was a great entertainer. My all-time favorite Lucy story was told by her mega-talented daughter, Lucy Arnaz. Her daughter's a has-been. She's not mega-talented, but oh well. At the beginning of the book, Love Lucy, one of my mother's favorite things to do when a small group of people were involved in some ordinary conversation was to wait until one of them left the room, and as soon as she returned, blurt out convincingly, "Here she is now, why don't you tell her to her face?" You could almost hear Lucy's lunged laugh, ha 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 ha. Here's a picture of Lucy's first home in Hollywood, which would probably go for about $1.3 million in 2013. Not because of Lucy, just because. So that's a picture of Lucy's first house in Hollywood. On Tuesday, April 18, 1989, she was at her home of 100 years at 1000 North Roxbury. That's her final home. In Beverly Hills, when she started experiencing chest pains, her husband, Gary Morton, called the ambulance and she was rushed to the emergency room of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And that's the entrance to the emergency room of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. There's an exterior picture of the hospital. When she underwent bypass surgery for 8 hours, she received an aorta from a 27-year-old male victim of a motorcycle crash. A big thanks for the Cedars photo given goes to Terry Rios. So this guy that has a website, he has people that they come to the website and then they'll submit photos and things like that and more information. So that's how he is able to obtain a lot of this. By Wednesday, 14 hours after surgery, Lucy awakened and asked Gary Morton, "How's the dog doing?" Gary said, "I'm fine, thanks." Kidding. Sort of. He released this quote, "Her Irish eyes are smiling. Hollywood went bananas with get well wishes. Just across the street from the hospital, the Hard Rock Cafe erected a sign, Lucy." And there it is, Hard Rock Cafe with the sign that says, "I love Lucy." Or Hard Rock loves Lucy. All signs were looking good for old Lucy when suddenly and without warning, the aorta burst. Doctors said, no doubt scared shitless about a lawsuit, but the rupture occurred far from where a portion of her aortic valve was replaced during surgery last week. Wherever it burst was irrelevant. On Wednesday, the 26th of April, 1989, at 6 a.m., the rule became Lucy-less. She was 77 years old. And here's Lucy's death certificate. And place of her burial, Forest Lawn, 6300 Forest Lawn Drive, LA, California. And I have seen her grave. Hollywood Chamber of Commerce put flowers on her star on the Walk of Business cards. Actually, this is the Walk of Fame. This is Lucy's. If you ever go to Hollywood, you'll find her star on the Walk of Fame. There were 3 public memorial services scheduled around the country for her. One in Los Angeles, one in Chicago, hosted by Herb Kupchinek, which I attended, and one in New York, was where Lucy originally was born. They were all held at 8 p.m. on Monday, May 8th, the same time I Love Lucy used to air on television. There's an old publicity photo of her. Lucy's real funeral was private. Gary Morton, her husband, released a statement, and I'm paraphrasing. There's a guy with a hearse that shows people where people are buried. None of us want that. Lucy was cremated, and she was interred in the columbarium of Radiant Dawn at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills. This is a cremation niche she chose for herself and her mother. And there it is, which I've seen. But I want to explain this to everybody. And this is the reason why I brought up Lucy. She was buried in Forest Lawn Cemetery, as you can see here. Here's proof. There's the plaque on the outside of her. It's not a grave, but you know where they put them inside of a wall, like a mortuary. Okay. So I had seen this picture, and a friend of mine and I. This was about 2001, 2002. We took 2 weeks off work, and we went to LA specifically to take pictures. This is when we didn't have video cameras and cell phones. The video cameras are very expensive. So I took a 35 millimeter camera, and I took a lot of pictures of all these graves for 2 weeks. I was anticipating to see this grave. I specifically went to see this grave. When I got there, there was a sign saying it had been removed. Now, it's a matter of opinion on how everybody feels. You guys are up to your own opinion is fine. I'll accept it. But I think it was very wrong. What happened was her daughter, Lucy Arnaz, had the body dug up from Hollywood and shipped up to New York so she could enter it into the Lucy Museum. They have a museum there in New York with all these props and things from the Lucy shows and from Lucy and Desi's life. So the daughter actually had the body dug up and shipped to New York so they could prop up her museum. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I think, in my opinion, the daughter is despicable and greedy and money hungry. Because she was already rich because Lucy left a lot of money behind. But I think disturbing her resting place, I think, is despicable. And that's a nice way of putting it. And by the way, her daughter, Lucy Arnaz Jr., the one that I'm talking about, I don't want to use the word. She's married to Lawrence Luckinbill, the guy who played that shitty Cybok on Star Trek V. So he's a bad actor, out of work, washed up has-been. He hasn't done hardly anything besides Star Trek V. And he's married to Lucille Ball's daughter and living off Lucy and Desi's money. So he's also a scumbag. That's my opinion. Not happy with that. In March of 2002, there it is. Lucy's dug her up and moved them to Jamestown, New York. Lucy is now a tourist attraction in a place she did not want to be buried, so she can generate cash for her children. There it is. And there's a link here where you can view her grave. I'm not going to do it. I prefer to see the one from Hollywood. I don't want to see it propped up in a museum. Postscript: Gary Morton, a.k.a. Mr. Lucy, died on March. Let me explain something. As we all know, Lucy was married to Desi Arnaz for many years. He kept cheating on her. They even remarried once or twice. But ultimately, in the end, they divorced and never got back together. And she married this guy, Gary Morton. So when you hear that name mentioned, that was Lucy's last husband when she passed away. So Gary Morton, a.k.a. Mr. Lucy, died on March 30th, 1999, Palm Springs. He had remarried towards the end of his life. And there's a boy, that one's actually nice and clear. And that's Gary Morton, Lucy's ex-husband's death certificate. The house on Roxbury Drive was unfortunately reconstructed in recent years. You can see the various stages, so the exterior walls and windows are in the same place, but it's a very different house now. But not a different house, if you know what I mean. So that's what the house was like when it was undergoing some renovation. They even took down the famous wall that Lucy and Ethel happened. Okay, they even took down the famous wall that Lucy and Ethel hopped over to grab a grapefruit from Richard Widmark's house, though they really used Lucy's own wall. Of course, I grabbed a brick. Think I'm stupid? Don't answer that. Here's a rare picture of the pool in the backyard. Here's the letter I received from Lucy when I wrote her a fan letter. The portrait at the top of this page came with it. So this is a fan letter he wrote to Lucy, and she replied, "Dear friend, thank you for writing so many cards and letters, Kim. And each week that there isn't enough time for me to answer each of them personally. And I'll leave it up to you if you want to read the whole thing. I'm going to try to start getting through this quicker. Here's the sound stage where the Out of Lucy was filmed. You probably remember the episode when Lucy and Ethel take the Stars Homes tour. They actually used Lucy's real house. Universal Studios had a Lucy retrospective, including a model of the room where Lucy had her backgammon table set up with a view of the yard through the window. There was also a list pinned near the telephone, which I tried to get a picture of. The list is entitled, Always Ask, Whom Do I Laugh At? And the list of names follows. I like to think it's authentic, but I doubt it. Now, here's this about her daughter. Lucy, this is Junior, the daughter, has made a second career out of bashing her mom, including her Emmy-winning special, which was overly favorable to Desi Sr. without taking into account how it affected her as a woman. To have the entire town know that her hubby was screwing everything around and was drunk all the time. She doesn't seem to realize that those were different times and that she, Lucy or Junior, grew up with the advantages that her mom never had. Yes, usually just a second, my dog's like. Yes, Lucy was. Sorry about my dogs. I just fed them a few minutes ago. Lucy was abrasive and direct, but her kindness towards many unfortunates and co-workers and extended family were legendary. Though kept quiet by herself, interestingly, the house in Beverly Hills on Roxbury that she bought for $80,000 sold after her death for nearly $10 million. Henry Fonda once said when he mentioned her that he was buying a new home, she advised him to check all the pipes. He didn't listen. They burst, and he said, "Now I know why it was Desilu." They had dated in the 30s, and he said if he'd played his cards right, he would have been Henry Lou. And there's more. There's more. That's her casket. If you want more dish on Lucy and her terribly untalented kids, thank you. This guy agrees with me. Check out Desi's page. So here's a link here. You can click on. I'm not going to because I'm not a fan of her kids. Her son, she has a son and a daughter. All right. Lucy Jr. was a daughter who, like I said, money hungry and did nothing but exploit her parents' fortune. The son was Desi Jr. He was a drummer, and he pretty much stayed at the sidelines. He did get part of the fortune, but he didn't squander as much of the money as bad as Lucy and Lawrence Luckinbill did. So that's another reason why people ask me, do you like Star Trek 5? No. And it's hard to explain to them the reason why I hate Star Trek 5 so much. But that's one of the main reasons. So I don't consider Star Trek 5 canon. Oh, Lizzie Borden, Keith Moon, Kathleen Freeman, Karen Carpenter, Judy Garland. Let me catch up on the chat here. I know I'm getting way behind. Nims of Eden says, popping in to say hi and leave a like. Hope you are all doing well. Well, I am Nemesis. Thank you. Good to see you. Glad you could stop in. And by the way, as a reminder, everybody, we did a poll for our horror sci-fi stream on Tuesday. It looks like we're going to be covering. Will you stop it? It looks like we're going to be covering Forbidden Planet of 1956. So I urge you, if you're able to join us Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, where we're going to cover that movie. Lemon Pie says, I didn't see if this was from that list, but Natalie Wood, perhaps. Yes, she's on there. And I'll make it a point of checking her out next. Lemon Pie says, Nemesis, I hope you are doing fine, sir. Phantom Boomer says, I had work done at Cedar Sinai. Nemesis Eden says, doing well, buddy, just at work, Lemon Pie. Sorry to hear that, Nemesis. Cool, Nemesis. Oh, that thing that pays for stuff work. Well, yeah, unfortunately, it is necessary. Phantom Boomer says, Nemesis of Eden, howdy. And Nemesis says, hello there, Phantom Boomer. And Herc 130 says, PCC, Boomer, Lemon, and Nemesis. Good to see you, Herc 130. And Stream Elements I don't care about. Herc 130 says, Phantom Boomer, what's up? Lemon Pie says Herc. And Herc says hello at Lemon Pie. All right, let me mark the chat where I left off. Like I said, this is an open topic. There should be a link in the chat if anybody wants to join me. Might give me a chance to rest my voice a little bit, but I'm going to try to hold out as long as I can. All right, here we go. So, I got the first request I got was Judy Garland. No, I'm sorry. Natalie Wood. Let's take a look and see if we can find it. It's not here. Shock, shock, shock. I guess it doesn't have everybody. But these links that I've been mentioning, because like I said, this website links to other websites about celebrity deaths. You may find Natalie Wood in one of those. That's why I highly recommend this site here. It'll branch out to a lot of other things. And like I said, I do have a credit in the description to the creator of this website, findadeath.com. Without findadeath.com, I wouldn't be having this stream tonight. Noreen Shatner, William Shatner's wife. Oh, this one's got to be gruesome here. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Let's see, Martin Luther King Jr., Martha Ray, Marlon Brando. All right, I want to go up to the top here. Like I said, if there's any names you guys want me to look for, I can do that. Agnes Moorehead, she's the one that played in Dora on Bewitched, Sam's mother. Alan Hale Jr., he played the skipper on Gilligan's Island. I'm going to do that one. Alan Hale Jr. was born March 8, 1921, and he passed away January 2nd, 1990. And a quote from Alan was talking about Gilligan. I don't dislike him. I mean, it's just that I'd like to kill him every now and then. And that's Alan Hale Jr., as we all know and recognize him. Alan Hale Jr., Alan and his wife, whom he called Trinket, lived on Orange Grove in Hollywood. And there's a street sign. Sorry, it's kind of small. Their house was number 1418. So there was a picture of the house that Alan Hale lived in. And it's interesting because that Cadillac parked in front is a 1969 Fleetwood, which is the very first car that I purchased. And Alan Hale, I bought it used, by the way, and had a lot of problems with it. I paid $800 for it. But I loved that car. And Alan Hale, when he was a driver, that's what he drove mostly, was Cadillacs. So it's interesting, this picture. I don't know if that was actually Alan Hale's car or not. Or later on, whoever had the house happened to drive Cadillacs as well. I'm not sure. He was such a nice guy, never shunning a fan and always letting rip with that huge laugh of his. He was diagnosed with cancer of the thymus in early 1989. He was, by the way, a heavy chain smoker. He went to treatment and thought he had beaten it, but 5 months later, it reappeared in his stomach and lungs. Even while sick, Alan still kept an upbeat attitude. One of his favorite things to do was visit sick children in the hospital. And here we have a picture of the Gilligan's Island cast much, much later. And I would say this is probably one of their last photographs together. And these dolls right here, first of all, in the center is Sherwood Schwartz, the producer. And these dolls that you see here, he kept in his office. And right there, you can see from left to right, Alan Hale Jr. has played the skipper. Russell Johnson, who played the professor. Don Wells, who played Marianne. Jim Backus, who played Mr. Howell. As you can see, he looks very old there. But this is probably when he had severe Parkinson's, just before he passed away. And then finally, there's Natalie Schaefer, who played Mrs. Howell. And fascinating enough, you can see she looks better than he does, even though she was older than him. Sherwood Schwartz, the creator of Gilligan's Island, told the story of one such occasion. There was a boy about 10 who had just had a kidney removed. Alan debated whether he should see the boy. Just then the doctor came along and said, "Go ahead, he's waking up." Alan went in and the boy looked up in disbelief and said, "Skipper?" Alan said, "That's right, son. The skipper here is here and everything's going to be all right." Shortly before his death, he was admitted to St. Vincent's Medical Center in Los Angeles, which looks like this. He knew he was dying, but instead of talking about it, he just remarked what a beautiful day it was. He said he wanted to stay here until the sun goes down. His wife sat holding his hand, and she, Alan, and a priest prayed. Then, just as the sun went down, Alan drew his last breath. It was Tuesday, January 2nd, 1990. He was 71 years old. And there's Alan Hale Jr.'s death certificate. Skipper was cremated, and on January 6th, his ashes, for the first time, I can say appropriately, were scattered at sea. And that's a picture of the boat they used to scatter his ashes. Out of the original cast, now this is not on this page, but this is what I read in the, whenever I host Gilligan's Island on Wednesdays, I have the book Inside Gilligan's Island by Sherwood Schwartz, the producer. And according to him, that during this funeral service, when they scattered his ashes, the only surviving cast member that was able to attend was Dawn Wells Marianne. So she was there. This was supposed to be a private event with no press. But unfortunately, they were upset because somebody heard about it, and a helicopter came out and started circling the boat and took this picture. So this picture was actually unauthorized. And the people that were holding the funeral were very upset about it. But if it wasn't for this picture, we wouldn't have any record of it. I wrote a note of sympathy to Mrs. Hale, and this is what I received from her. This is from Mrs. Alan Hale. Alan called her Trinket. "Hello, Scott. Your note was most appreciated. Thank you seriously for everything. Warmest regards, Trinket Hale." Sweet and thoughtful. Alan owned a restaurant here in LA called Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel. Here's an advertisement. And by the way, when I met him when I was in the Air Force, about 1987, 88, I met him and got his autograph. And I asked him, he owned this restaurant at the time. And I asked him, I said, "So how's the restaurant business going?" And he said, "Great." And I remember saying, "I need to make it down there sometime." Because I had heard that he would wear his skipper outfit and he would come out and personally greet guests that were eating in the restaurant. I'm not much of a seafood eater, but I would have went ate steaks or fries or something like that just to meet him. And I feel sad because he passed away not long after, and I never was able to go to LA to see it. And that's Alan Hale Jr., Skipper. I'm going to go back and check the chat. Nemzavine says, "Hello there, Hurt 130. Hurt says, "PCC, I don't mind the dogs barking. I don't mind Jill's kids interrupting its life, and to me, it's the sound of being named humans." Right? I like these streams so much better than slick produced shows. Romeo, I'm going to put that food up if you keep it up. Stop being a pig. Okay. Lemify has a picture of a dog. Hurt 130 says, "Dawn Wells, hubba hubba. She was still very good looking when she was older. It was terrible the coup got her." I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it was. I was actually following her on Facebook. She made a few last appearances. Unfortunately, she was going through a lot of medical treatment, which took all of her money. And they had a public GoFundMe for people to raise money to help her and her medical expenses. She had to end up auctioning out everything in her house. There was a lot of photos on Facebook of all the different things they sold. But I don't think it was the coup. I can look it up later. Maybe I'll mention it on my Gilligan's Island stream. I could be wrong. Nemzavine says, "I must go now. My planet needs me." Good luck, Nemesis. Stay amazing, everyone, says Nemesis. Lemify says, "Later, Nemesis." All right, let me mark that. If anybody has any recommendations or who you want me to look up, just say so. Let me go back to check the directory. I'm trying to pick names that most of you guys have heard of. I don't want to pick anything too obscure. Alfred Hitchcock. Alice Ghostly. She played Esmeralda on Bewitched. Alice Pierce. I believe that was Mrs. The neighbor across the street from Samantha and Darren that was nosy. Mrs. Kravitz. Alan Melvin. He played Sam the Butcher on The Brady Bunch. And I'm sure most of you guys have heard of Amy Winehouse. Andre the Giant. Sorry for the delay there. And we also have Andy Gibb here from Brother of the Bee Gees, Andy Kaufman, Andy Warhol, Anna Lee, Anna Nicole Smith, Annette Funicello, Anthony Perkins, Anton Yelchin. He's the one who played Chekhov in the new Star Trek movies. He's the one that was crushed by his Jeep. Let's see, Barbara Stanwyck, B. Arthur. We all know her from the Golden Girls. B. Benaderet. She voiced, excuse me. B. Benaderet voiced. She was the original Betty on the Flintstones, Betty Rubble. And she also played the lady who ran the Shady Rest Hotel on Petticoat Junction. She passed away while they were still filming the show Petticoat Junction, and they had to replace her with June Lockhart, if that makes any difference. Bela Lugosi, the guy who played Dracula. Ben Franklin. Benny Hill. Ooh, I'm going to do Benny Hill. Benny was born January 21st, 1924. Passed away April 20th, 1992. He once said, "I'm not against half-naked girls, not as often as I'd like to be." And there's Benny. Alfred Hawthorne Benny Hill was born in the small southern British coastal town of Southampton on January 24th, 1924. As a boy, Hill liked performing in school productions and credited his favorite childhood actor, Charlie Chaplin, for inspiring him to be a star. After leaving school, Hill held several jobs: milkman, bridge operator, driver, then as a drummer. And his journey to perform eventually led him to take a job as an assistant stage manager. During World War II, Hill worked in working men's clubs, revues, and end-of-the-pier shows all over Britain. After the war and before television, Hill worked as a radio performer, an early believer in television. Hill first appeared over the airwaves in 1949 on a show called Hi There. He chose to change his first name to Benny after the comedian Jack Benny. Continued to work on and off. Hill's own television career was officially launched in 1955 on BBC television, and his show ran off until 1969. It was in 1969 that Hill moved over to Thames Television and began making those titty comedy sketches that he is most remembered for to this day. It is said that one of the most influential people that helped to form Hill's comedy persona was the American comedian Red Skelton, and there are distinct similarities between the work of the comedians. No thanks to syndication, 111 half-hour episodes of Benny Hill. Excuse me. Sorry, my throat is just so dry. Thanks to syndication, 111 half-hour episodes of the Benny Hill Show made its American debut on television in 1979. Edited from earlier produced television programs, Hill continued to appear on British television until 1989 when his show was finally canceled because of political correctness. Although Hill was primarily known as a television personality, he made occasional appearances in film, beginning around 1956 in a motion picture called Who Done It. Hill also performed in the 1965 movie Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines as Chief Perkins. In the 1968 movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as the toy maker and several others. It can also be seen in the 1986 music video Anything She Wants by the group Genesis, where he plays one of his longtime television characters, Fred Scuttle. There were always rumors that Benny was gay, but he denied them, saying, "I'm very set in my ways. Anyway, I have a mental age of about 17, far too young for marriage." Benny was also mama's boy, and when his mother did die, he inherited her home and kept it as a shrine for her. At the end of his life, he lived in a modest apartment in Twickenham Road, Teddington, a western suburb of London. And there's the address. He lived in a complex called Fairwater House. And that looks like a current picture of it. So he had an apartment in there. Here's the front entrance. Here's the front door. And the doorbell. Here's the mailbox. They really go into some detail on some of these. I could get in to find his actual flat, but it was no doubt on this side of the complex. He had been hospitalized twice in recent months for heart problems. Doctors told him that he needed to lose 30 pounds off his 240-pound body. On Monday, April 24th, 1992, neighbors worried that they hadn't seen Benny in a while and called the police. They responded, knocked his door in, and found the 4-day dead corpse of Hill sitting in his armchair in front of the television. Supposedly, he was surrounded with cash and checks that he hadn't cashed. He was 67 years old. And here's a copy of Benny Hill's death certificate. Cause of death, coronary thrombosis. He is buried in Hollybrook Cemetery in Southampton. I mentioned this on a previous stream, that after Benny Hill was buried, his grave was broken into twice. Because when people heard that he died with all that money around him and checks, they were foolish enough to think that they buried those with him, which of course they don't do. So his grave was broken into a total of 2 times. And then that's when they finally put this heavy marble slab over the grave so it would never happen again. In 1991, Benny announced he was planning to leave most of his fortune to 2 women suffering from cerebral palsy. Phoebe King and Jeanette Warner were fans of Benny's for 42 years, a relationship which began with a fan letter. This information from Mark directly contradicts what I've gathered over years, but is detailed enough to include as a possibility. Hill's last will and testament caused utter confusion because he had left his estate to his parents, and both had been dead for years. Since Hill's brother and sister were also dead, the bulk of his estate, estimated at £7.5 million, was given to his surviving nieces and nephews. It was reported that some papers were found after Hill's demise where he reportedly left his estate to longtime friends and fellow performers Sue Upton, Louise English, Bob Todd, Henry McGee. They were on the Benny Hill Show. And director Dennis Kirkland. However, the papers were never notarized, so that had no legal standing. Although Hill proposed to 2 different women in his lifetime, neither of them chose to accept the offer. Well, here it is. It mentioned in October of 1992, thieves dug up Hill's body, smashed in the coffin, searched in vain for a fortune in jewels he was apparently buried with. Press accounts say the Benny's burial shroud was untouched, but if they did a real search, that would be unlikely. They rebury Hill with a new lid and the solid slab across the top of the grave that you see today. There's a premiere of the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang when it came out in the 60s. I can't remember exactly which year. And there's the child catcher from Benny from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the guy that had that horse and buggy. There was a cage where he would capture kids. Oh, that's actually, this isn't the guy from the movie. This is Richard, the guy from Rocky Horror Picture Show who played Rick Rath. So in the stage play of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which the guy mentioned here, Benny the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, I love that film. It's opening soon in London on the stage. Last week I took in a preview show. I took my friend Sadie from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, who was also in the film version of Chitty. The show was pretty good, not as good as I hoped for, but not as bad as I dreaded. Michael Ball with mediocre best and child actors didn't annoy me. There it is. Richard O'Brien, who wrote Rocky Horror and played the butler in the film, played the child catcher. Richard stole the show, not surprising. Sadie and I met with Richard for a while after the show and talked about my book that's coming out soon, and Sadie's involvement in both films. Richard spent most of the time picking the rubber makeup off of his ears, a truly sweet, humble man. Now for the dirt. I worked on a television show for a while that dug up the real skinny on celebrities from the hose that dissed the dirt. He would use parts on his show for sexual bribes. He was a cruel misogynist who hated being upstaged. He had a fixation with his mother that carried on to his sexual life. But even more interesting, it's common thought that he died a virgin. How about that? Someone did handwriting analysis on him, and the test supposedly confirmed it. We're talking about Benny Hill. Okay, so I'm going to go back. And that was Benny Hill, people. Excuse me. Eric 130 says, be right back. I'm sorry, my voice is getting less and less. I'm still drinking water trying to catch up. All right. Bernard Fox. He's one of Bernard Fox played Dr. Bombay on Bewitched. Bernie Mac, I'm sure most of you guys know who that was. Bert Convy was a mediocre, terrible game show host. I think Tattletales was the name of his game show that he hosted. There's Betty Davis, and I've seen her grave as well. Betty Page, Bill Bixby from The Incredible Hulk. Billy Barty, which I also met the same time I met the skipper. Billy Barty was the midget, or little person, I guess. Oh, Bing Crosby. I was talking about him on my past stream, and people don't understand how horrible of a man he was. Bob Crane is the guy who played Hogan on Hogan's Heroes. Bob Denver, who played Gilligan on Gilligan's Island. Bob Hope, we all know who that was. Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. Brian Jones. Brian Keith, who played in Family Affair, as well as a lot of westerns and movies. There's Bruce Lee. Buddy Epson, who played Barnaby Jones and also played in Beverly Hillbillies. And he was the original Tin Man on The Wizard of Oz before he got ill from the makeup and was replaced. And there's Buddy Hackett, Buddy Holly. Buddy Rich was a drummer. Bugsy Siegel, which is a crime figure in Vegas when it was ran by Mafia. One of my favorites, Buster Keaton, and I did visit his grave, a silent movie comedian. Carol Channing, who sang Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Carolyn Jones, who played Morticia in the Addams Family TV series. Cary Grant. See, I can't read them all. Cassie Elliott, Mama from the Mamas and the Papas. Charles Nelson Riley, Charles Pierce, Chris Farley. Clara Bow, an old silent film actress. Clara Peller. I'm surprised I remember the name. Clara Peller is the one from the commercials. Where's the beef? Clark Gable, Cleavon Little, Corey Haim, Curtis Lee, Dale Earnhardt, who died in 2001. So I can look at these dates over to the right, and it shows the dates of their death. That'll kind of give me an idea if there's anything recent. Here's one from 2015 of Daryl Winfield. Darren McGavin, we all know him from The Night Stalker, and he also played the father in A Christmas Story. I also saw his grave. Davy Jones from the Monkees. Dean Martin, I want to mention, was buried right around the corner from Marilyn Monroe. I did see his grave. And on his epitaph reads, "Everybody loves somebody sometime," which was one of his famous songs. There's DeForest Kelley, Dr. McCoy. Del Shannon, the singer. Desi Arnaz, Lucille Ball's husband. Dick Clark, we all know him from Dick Clark's from American Bandstand and that New Year's Rockety where he did every New Year's drop the ball. And he was replaced by that wretched, I can't remember. I can't stand the guy that replaced him. Dick Sargent, he was the replacement Darren on Bewitched. Dick York, who was the original Darren on Bewitched, who had a lot of back problems because he injured his back on a Western movie. Divine, if anybody knows who Divine is, I'm a big fan from the John Waters movies like Pink Flamingos, among others. Dominique Dunn, she was the brunette daughter on the Poltergeist, the original one. Don Adams, who played Maxwell Smart on the series Get Smart. Don Cornelius, who hosted Soul Train. Don Knotts, as most of you guys know from the Andy Griffith Show, and later went on to do Three's Company. Donna Douglas, she played Ellie Mae on the Beverly Hillbillies. Donna Reed, a sitcom from the late 50s, early 60s. Dorothy Dandridge, a famous pinup model in Hollywood, beautiful woman. Another one was Dorothy Stratton. Oops, I accidentally clicked. That was Dorothy Stratton. So that gives you an idea. She was very beautiful. Dudley Moore, we all know him from the Arthur movies. Dusty Springfield, I believe, was a singer. Ed Wood, Eddie Albert from Green Acres. I think he lived to be 100. Elizabeth Montgomery and the cast of Bewitched right here. Let's check that out. Here we go. Elizabeth Montgomery, who played Samantha. Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora, her mother. Marion Lorne played Aunt Clara, the one that was always making mistakes when she cast spells. David White, who played Larry Tate. Alice Pierce, who played Mrs. Kravitz from across the street. She died in the, I believe, the second season. Bewitched was on the air a total of 7 or 8 years. And the original Mrs. Kravitz died like during the second season. And she was replaced by Sandra Gould. Sandra Gould was the replacement. George Tobias, he played Mr. Kravitz. He was the guy that always never paid attention to what she was saying. And she was always saying, Abner, Abner, come and look out the window. And then we have Maurice Evans, who played Samantha's father. And he also played Dr. Zaius on the original Planet of the Apes movies. Elizabeth Montgomery was born April 15, 1933. She passed away May 18, 1995. She once quoted, "The minute someone says, 'Oh God, you could never do that. You can't get that kind of stuff on the air. That's the kind of stuff I want to do.'" She was a very beautiful woman. She was into older men. And that was a big rip between her and her dad. Her dad was a famous actor, Robert Montgomery, but he became jealous of her fame because she became more famous than him, and she ended up making more money than him. And he didn't like the fact that she was always after older men. She had a father complex. She liked to be called Lizzie and always claimed to be 5 years younger than what she actually was. In fact, her brother would often tease her because at some point the older younger sibling thing got switched. For the record, she was born in 1933. According to her death certificate, she had colon cancer for years. How this figures into the story is a mystery because, by all accounts, it sounds like she had just found out of the blue. Lizzie was most famous as Samantha in the long-running television show Bewitched. And there she is playing Serena, her on the right with the brunette wig. After the series went off the air, she concentrated on television movies, racking up a respectable number of them, including Legend of Lizzie Borden, Deadline for Murder, and I remember Cry Rape was one that I saw right after Bewitched off the air, where she was raped. And it was, as a kid, it was strange watching that, considering it was right after Bewitched. In March of 1995, she was filming the CBS television film Deadline for Murder. She thought she had the flu because she was always tired and losing weight. After the shoot was over, she checked into Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and had exploratory surgery. And there it is. She was told that her colon cancer was back. Shocked, Lizzie was too weak for radiation therapy, so she went home to rest and returned 4 days later. More surgery proved that the disease spread to her liver, and there was no hope. She went home to her house on Benedict Canyon. There's a street sign. Unfortunately, all the photographs I have of her house are only of the driveway. Steve and I did try to sneak a peek at the house once, but a car was coming. We freaked out. It was midnight. So that's the driveway of her home. She shared with her partner 20 years, Robert Foxworth. He's another actor. They had met in 1974 on the set of another classic piece of television, Mrs. Sundance. Here's the driveway. I once wrote to her at this address a photo from her. My sister told me that her signature looked like fabric turnover. I thought that was funny. Here's a picture. Fabric turnover. It does look kind of strange. Lizzie normally weighed 122 pounds, but had wasted down to 82 pounds in the following weeks. On May 8th, she went back to Cedars-Sinai, dehydrated and malnourished. We treated her, kept her on painkillers, and discharged her on May 15th. She went home to die with dignity. The doctors ceased giving her all medication except for morphine. Supposedly, she made Foxworth promise that he would marry again. They embraced, and she drifted off, never to wake again. Elizabeth Montgomery died quietly, alone on May 18th. She requested that her husband and her 3 children wait quietly in the living room. She didn't want anyone to see her that way. I don't know if that's all true, but it's a crazy ending, and she was a classy lady. This is Elizabeth Montgomery's death certificate. Okay, immediate cause of death: respiratory arrest, malnutrition, metastatic colon cancer. There was no funeral, and her body was cremated. Her ashes were given to her family. No one knows what was done with them. A memorial service was held on June 18, 1995, at the Cannon Theater in Beverly Hills. Herbie Hancock, the singer, provided the music, and Dominic Dunn, the girl I told you from Poltergeist, spoke about their days together in New York when they were first starting out. Maybe I have the name mixed up. Maybe Dominic Dunn's a different person. Other speakers included Robert Foxworth, who read out sympathy cards from fans, her nurse, her brother, daughter, and stepson. Amanda McBroom sang, and the entire service ended with lights going down and a beautiful shot of her on a video screen. Lizzie got a standing ovation. She asked that any donations in her memory should be made to the William Holden Wildlife Association in Kenya or the LA Zoo. In June of 1999, there was an auction of her things in Beverly Hills. Her 1977 Bentley with the license plate Bent Liz went for 15 grand. I wish I could have been there. I wouldn't have bought it. I just wish I had been there. On January 4th, 2008, a star for Elizabeth Montgomery was unveiled on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And there's a picture of them. I want to mention, too, over to the far right, the old man sitting down in a wheelchair. That was her husband, William Asher. He directed a lot of the episodes of Bewitched and ended up marrying her. And there was an interview on the Biography channel. It was about a little biography, an hour long, about Elizabeth Montgomery. And he said that what happened was the show went on for 8 years, and it could have kept going. It had high ratings. But she had enough. She was done with the show. She wanted to go on to do more serious acting. And so she told CBS at the time, she said, I'm not going to do any more. And she told her husband, William Asher, the guy in the wheelchair, she goes, I'm going to go to Paris. I want to travel. I want to see the world. And he said, no. He told her no. There's a lot of offers for TV movies. They want you in. And you're in hot demand right now. She was not happy about that, so she left him. And that's when she met up with Robert Foxworth that I mentioned previously. Anyway, on this biography special, when they interviewed him, he said that was his biggest regret. That when she said, let's go to Paris, he said he should have taken her. And he said he loved her until the very end. Her daughter on the left, Rebecca. Her son, Billy Asher, holding his daughter, and Robert Asher. Trying to see if I can cover all his wife and 3 children. Lizzie was nominated for an Emmy 9 times, but never won. As for her co-stars on Bewitched, you can go elsewhere on Find a Deaf with stories of the 2 Dicks and York, Dick Sargent and Dick York. Lizzie had a great Dick joke. It's included in Sargent's story, and I'll tell you guys that one. There was a famous video. Okay, Dick Sargent, the second Darren on Bewitched, was gay. And if you watch the show, you can obviously tell. They had a gay pride parade in Hollywood one year. And I don't know if I can dig at the video if it still exists, but it used to be around. And she was invited to be Grand Master of this gay pride parade. And this is the 1980s. And they were doing an interview with her and Dick Sargent as the parade was passing by them, the floats and all that stuff. And the interviewer asked her, said, what brought you to the parade here? What made you decide to be Grand Master? And she said, for my love of Dick. So that's that joke. I hope I didn't spoil it for anybody. Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora, Samantha's mother. Born December 6, 1900, April 30th. She died April 30th, 1974. She was quoted as saying, you forbid me? Isn't that divine? Oh, really, Samantha? I think you've lost your marbles. And there she is. She started out with the Mercury Theater with Orson Welles radio show. She was even in the famous radio show of War of the Worlds from 1938 that captivated the world and made everybody panic. Agnes Moorehead played Sam's mother, Endora. She died of cancer on April 13th, 1974. This is literally right after the show ended. Cancer, she worked on that John Wayne film where everyone got cancer. That's a movie where John Wayne played Genghis Khan. They went and filmed it out in the Nevada desert. There was a testing ground. And everybody lied to the actors and the crew, saying that it was safe. But most of them ended up dying from cancer from that. They filmed it in Newfoundland, Nevada. This was her home on Roxbury Drive in Beverly Hills. The facade has changed a bit since she lived there, but the house still stands. Paul Lynde, who played Uncle Arthur, called her one of the all-time Hollywood dykes. I heard that she was a lesbian, but they also said she was a Bible thumper. They said that she carried the Bible with her everywhere. And she was a very strict Christian. So, do the two mix? I don't know. Who am I to judge? There's Agnes Moorehead's death certificate. Cause of death widely metastatic carcinoma and carcinoma of uterus. Ooh, uterus cancer. That's too bad. And here's a picture. If I wanted to view her grave, I said there's a link. So that's why I encourage you to check out this website, which I'll remind you guys is findadeath.com. And why do I keep getting all these tweets? Messages all of a sudden. Oh, Cam. Interesting. Cam's moving. Okay. Marion Lorne. She's when I told you there she is. You guys might remember her. She played Aunt Clara, the one that was absent-minded, that kept messing up the spells. She would like appear inside the fireplace and stuff like that, or inside the closet. She was the oldest of the cast. As you can see, she was born in August 12, 1885, and she died May 9, 1968. Now, Bewitched was on the air until 1974. So she was only on the first season or two of Bewitched before she passed away, sadly, because she was very, very funny. I really loved her, and it was too bad that she died. Now, I don't know if they're going to mention in here her collection of doorknobs. If they don't, I will. Marion Lorne played Aunt Clara. She died on May 9th, 1968 of heart failure. They don't mention it, but she carried around a collection of glass doorknobs. And even in one of the episodes, they wrote that into the plot where Aunt Clara had a bunch of doorknobs with her, but she actually did collect them in real life. She was a little eccentric. David White, April 4th, 1916 to November 27th, 1990, who said, "No, this is no pleasure trip, especially this year. My wife insists on coming with me." There he is. He played Larry Tate, the boss of Darren. His wife died in childbirth, and his son was killed in the Pan Am Lockerbie bombing over Scotland. A daughter survives him. David lived on Blick Street in North Hollywood, and there's a sign. Here's his house. He died on November 27, 1990 at the North Hollywood Medical Center, which apparently now is an urgent care clinic. Thanks to findadeath.com friends Chad Jones for the house picks and Terry Rios for the Med Center. David died in 1990, 2 years after his son was killed in the Lockerbie bombing. David never recovered, according to my buddy Chuck Kearns. Until recently, David was held in storage in the Grandview Mausoleum in Glendale. I'm here to tell you that David is now interred with his son in the Valentino Shrine in the Cathedral Mausoleum at Hollywood Forever. Just a few spaces from the cool. And there's his death certificate. Acute myocardial infarction, atherosclerosis, and diabetes. I can't read all that correctly. Sorry, I'm not a doctor. This I did see. I did see this, and I took a picture of it when I was visiting the Hollywood celebrities. And there's a death mask of him. There's a younger picture of him to the right with the beard. Alice Pierce, October 16, 1917 to March 3rd, 1966. This was the original Mrs. Kravitz. And she once said, "I had never been beautiful, but I have been blessed with a rich career and the love of two fine men." That's her on the right. Like I said, Bewitched was only on the air for a year or two before she passed away and had to be replaced. Alice Pierce is best known as Gladys Kravitz, the original and best Gladys, not the Subway sandwich spitting. Let me explain here. The replacement of Mrs. Kravitz, the second one, went on to do Subway sandwich commercials. Okay, so this one was a Broadway actress and a television staple. She played in television programs like Dobie Gillis, Dennis the Menace, Twilight Zone, Hazel, Donna Reed, and movies like The Glass Bottom Boat and On the Town. She was married twice. Her first husband was John Rocks. He wrote the song "It's a Big, Wide, Wonderful World." He pre-directory her. I don't know what that means. Her second, Paul Davis. I think it means he died before her. Pre-directory her makes no sense. Her second, Paul Davis, had an art framing shop in Los Angeles. She lived in this house in the Hollywood Hills. According to Wiki, she auditioned for the part of Grandmama Adam's Family and lost out to Jeanette MacDonald's sister, Blossom Rock. And that's Grandmama from the Adams Family. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer before production began on Bewitched. It became evident that she was becoming more ill as the series progressed. Alice made it through 2 seasons before passing away at the age of 48. And here's her death certificate. Sorry, I need to silence my phone. I apologize, guys. And there. Mute. Cancer of the ovarian cancer, yep. He died at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Hollywood, which, look what it is now, Scientology Center. Ugh. So I guess Tom Cruise spends a lot of time in that building. Cedars of Lebanon closed and merged with Mount Sinai, creating the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. There's an old pic of it. She was awarded a posthumous Emmy for Bewitched. She was cremated and scattered at sea. There's a picture of the exterior facade of the Kravitz house on the Warner Brother backlot, which has since been destroyed within the last few years, unfortunately. They went through and bulldozed all those classic homes from the TV shows and movies so they can reuse them for something else, which is a tragedy. I always wanted to go visit that. And of course, this guy was able to go visit before it was shut down. The actual Kravitz home burned in a fire. I'm not going to repeat what he says completely. Sandra Gold. Now, this was a replacement, Mrs. Kravitz. Before I get to there, I'm going to catch him on the channel. See how far I am. Not too bad. Cam says hello, everybody. Pop culture. Hi, Pop. So good to see you, Cam. And good luck with that move. We need to talk about that more in the future. Lemon Pie, howdy pie. And Cam says, Nemesis of Eden, hi. Cam says, Herc 130, hi, Herc. Lemon Pie says, hey, Cam. Cam says, pop culture, you all right? Yeah, I'm sorry, I sound a little weak. I'm actually doing better. You guys know I had cancer and I had a brain tumor removed just before I left California. So since I moved, I haven't been able to do any treatment because I still have at least 2 other parts of my body that have cancer, including one of my lungs. But I'm having all my records sent over and switched over, and I have my first appointment Thursday to start treatment here in Arizona. So as I start the chemo and the radiation, hopefully I'll start sounding better. Herc 130 says, I'm back. Herc. Liz Montgomery, mega babe, absolutely. Cam says, Herc 130, Montgomery was a total babe. Yes, I would agree with that. Hello, Jim's Landscape. Jim Landscape says hello. Hail, Herc, says Jim. Hail, Lemon, says Jim. And Jim says, Hail, Eden. Herc says, on Young Sheldon, their set house was one of those bulldozed. The producers wrote the storyline of a tornado destroying the house and made a cliffhanger out of it. Word of note, the exterior facade where they filmed Bewitched The Stevens house where Samantha and Darren lived. That was used in many TV shows and movies. It was used in an episode of the show Home Improvement. And in the episode, they accidentally burned it down. And at the time when they did, the crew behind the show of Home Improvement were devastated because they were fans of Bewitched. So they actually rebuilt it. It was rebuilt and remodeled and changed over the years a few different times. By the way, I have a video of this on my channel of the Bewitched house. And it was, I think one of the last times it was used was in, unfortunately, WandaVision. But now it's since been bulldozed. And a reminder, in case you guys don't know, those were all facades. They were just like a false front of a house. Everything you see in the TV show, the interiors were filmed on a soundstage. Jim says, "Hey, Boomer." Or Quincy says, hey, Jim. And Jim says, "Hey, Lola Greg." Jim says, "Hail, Franco." And Cam says, Jim, "Hi, Jim." All right, let me mark that. So far, so good. I've been able to keep up with the chat somewhat. If I miss any of your chats, please let me know. Sandra Gold. Okay. This was a replacement Mrs. Kravitz. Born July 23rd, 1916. Died July 20th, 1999. And you might recognize her. So we had the original Miss Kravitz, and this was a replacement. She played the other Miss Kravitz. She was one of those staples of 60s television, appearing in everything. She was also in The Ghost and Mrs. Chicken, which was a good movie with Don Knotts, which starred pretty much the whole cast of Andy Griffith's show. A true classic. When I met her, she was eating a Subway sandwich and talking to me at the same time, thus covering me with big gloves of the Daily Special. Then she told me that I should hire her for an appearance. Sandra lived on Oakdale Lane in Studio City. And there's a street sign. Here's the house with the carport. So that's the real Kravitz house. You can't see the broken down car and trash cans that are there. Here's another shot of the house. On Tuesday, the 20th of July, 1999, Sandra died of a stroke after heart surgery in St. Joseph's Medical Center in North Hollywood. And there it is. And there is her death certificate. Cardiopulmonary arrest. Yeah, she died of a massive coronary. George Tobias, who played Mr. Kravitz, was born July 14, 1901, passed away February 27, 1980. He once was quoted as saying, "It don't make any sense, Gladys. He's got her. Why would he want to kiss you?" And there he is. He played, before Bewitched, he played in a lot of movies, like as a gangster in The Heavy as the bad guy. And there's an interesting story about his body in the casket on the way to the funeral. If they don't mention it here, I will. Looks like they might mention it. George Tobias played Mr. Kravitz. FindItFreth.com friend Bill Seil adds this account of what happened to George. I'm going to read it. And I'm going to change the screen so you all can see it. What happened to George Tobias? It was in the wee hours of February 26, 1980, the ringing of the phone awakened Warren McGill, an employee in the service department at Mount Sinai Memorial Park. It was a cemetery mortician who worked the graveyard shift, and he needed someone to pick up at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Warren was on his way. He dropped his car off at Mount Sinai and picked up a 1977 Ford station wagon that was used to transport bodies from the hospital to the cemetery and headed out into the dark February night. Warren made his pickup, strapped George Tobias, this is Mr. Kravitz, onto a gurney and was on his way back to Mount Sinai when he had a minor traffic accident at the corner of Sierra Bonita and Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. When Warren got out of the car to exchange insurance information with the other driver, he left the keys in the ignition. This was something that all of us in the search service department never did, that we always did. Whenever one of us would drive one of the cars around the center, when we got out, we left the keys in the ignition. It was a habit. But it was a habit that would be broken after this night's events. While Warren was talking to the other driver, two men jumped into the station wagon and took off, unaware that they had a backseat passenger, Mr. Tobias. They had driven only a few blocks when they discovered that they were not alone. The car came to a screeching stop at the corner of Sierra Bonita and Franklin Avenue where the thieves abandoned it. They ran screaming east on Franklin. Warren and his George finally made it back to Mount Sinai. When we showed up for work that morning, we had no idea about Warren's late night adventure. An employee meeting was held and everyone was informed as to what had happened and who the directory was, and that the cemetery would soon be overrun by the press. We were not to talk to anyone. There was a chance that the Tobias' family would sue the cemetery, and they didn't want any more trouble. The National Enquirer showed up and wanted to interview Warren. Warren told them that if he talked to them or if they used his name, he would be fired. To the Enquirer's credit, they didn't use his name. A memorial service for Tobias was held later that day. He was always one of my favorite character actors, and I asked my boss if I could be part of the service. And I'm going to go back to the original page. But I wanted to share that story where his hearse was stolen when his body was in it, because that's I thought very unique. There's the street sign up by his house. There's the house where George Tobias lived. It looks pretty small. There's a little closer shot of the house. Here's his front door. Big thanks to findadeath.com friend Chad Jones for these pictures. And George Tobias, Mr. Kravitz, this is his death certificate. And here's a link here if you want to view his grave. Maurice Evans, who played Samantha's father, born June 3rd, 1901, and died March 12th, 1989. And he once quoted as saying on the show, "You always did have a memory like a steel trap in Dora." And that's him. Maurice Evans played Samantha's father. Maurice just acquired a little dirt on the guy. True or false, it made interesting conversation. Maurice, who was hated by Orson Welles and other Shakespearean actors mainly because he was a millionaire through good pay and damn good investments, and they weren't. He was described by a queenly old friend of mine as the most gentlemanly chicken hawk as ever graced the earth. He returned to England shortly after capping his career with The Jerk and appearances on Heart to Heart, and died in an upscale retirement community in Maidstone. This is a lot of nasty dirt. I don't know if I want to read all of it, but if you do want to read a little bit more about the nasty dirt on the man before he passed away, you can check it out on this website, findadeath.com. There were many more, but these are my favorites, and I don't have much more info on the others. As always, feel free to share. So it does have some, like I said, some nasty stuff to say about some of them, but I'm not going to go there. It's not necessary. Let me check the chat, see how we're doing. I guess we're all caught up. I guess everybody's fairly quiet. Let's see, what is it? We've been on this 2 hours and 15 minutes. Wow, this is really taking a long time. I'm sorry if this is dragging on for such a long time, everybody. Like I said, if anybody has a suggestion on anybody's name they'd like, there's Elvis Presley, Errol Flynn, Ava Gabor, she played Lisa Douglas on Green Acres. Eve Arden, she played in a show called My Miss Brooks. But you guys might remember her as the principal from the movie Grease. She had red hair. Farrah Fawcett, we all know who she was. She was married to Lee Majors. Florence Henderson, the mother from the Brady Bunch. Frances Xavier, she played Aunt B on the Andy Griffith Show, and she had an interesting life. Uh, Hush. After the show aired, she moved to Mount Airy, where the show was inspired. The Andy Griffith Show. I'll make this quick. Andy Griffith grew up in a small town, I think in Tennessee, called Mount Airy, a small town, and that's where he based the show from, the Andy Griffith Show. That's what um, the town was kind of like a remake of that. And during the making of the old show of and Frances Xavier, who played Aunt B, I'd always heard Andy Griffith talking about Mount Airy, South Carolina, North Carolina. That was one of those. So when the show went up the air, she retired and she moved to that town. But as soon as she moved there, she became a big celebrity, and everybody would come knocking on her door. And she pretty much told everybody to leave her alone. She lived in a two-story house, and she ended up with dozens and dozens of cats. So she became a cat lady. When they filmed the TV movie Return to Mayberry in the 1980s, and they brought all the original cast back, Andy Griffith wanted her to return. She was still alive. They called her on the phone and asked her, do you want to do the Return to Mayberry? And she said no. So Andy Griffith and Ron Howard figured if they flew out to her house and surprised her, maybe they could convince her to be in the movie. So they flew out to Mount Airy, went to her door, and knocked on it. Apparently she was very upset, and they said that the smell from the cats was overwhelming, but she was very upset at them for showing up unannounced, and she turned down the role. So if you ever see the movie Return to Mayberry, she was not in it. She died shortly thereafter, and she did regret afterwards not doing the movie because she died with very little money. Feel free to read up more on her later if you'd like. Frank Gorshin, who played the Riddler from the Batman '66 series. Frank Sinatra, Fred Astaire, the dancer. Fred Rerun Gary, God from the show What's Happening. Fred Gwynn and the Munsters. So Fred Gwynn played Herman Munster. Fred McMurray from My Three Sons. Freddie Mercury from Queen. Freddie Prinze from Chico and the Man, who committed suicide. Gail Russell, Gail Gordon, who played Here's Lucy and the Lucy Show. Gary Coleman from Different Strokes. Gary Cooper, the actor. Gary Marshall, the producer, who did Happy Days, The Odd Couple, and his sister was from Laverne and Shirley. I'm tired. But his sister was Laverne on Laverne and Shirley. Gene Kelly, George Burns, George Harrison from the Beatles, George Michael from Wham, George Reeves, that's George Reeves, that's the one who played Superman from the 50s television show. Gilda Radner, she died tragically from one of the original Saturday Night Live, Not Ready for Primetime Players. Ginger Rogers, the wife of Fred Astaire. Gloria Swanson, the famous film actress. Grace Kelly, who became Princess or Queen Grace Kelly. Gregory Peck, Groucho Marx. Harry Houdini, the famous magician. Heather O'Rourke. Yeah, Heather O'Rourke. She's the one that played the daughter on Poltergeist that died because her boyfriend killed her. I'm going to check the chat really quick. Sean Carter says, dog will bark. I know. It's pooches. But I apologize to everybody, but I think I'm going to call it a stream. My voice is pretty much giving out on me. I'm sure you guys can tell it doesn't sound very good. So I need to give it a rest. I was hoping Gorilla would be here by now to help me with the chat, but I think he's still doing Schindler's List. If you guys want me to cover more of this in a future stream, please let me know and I can. If not, you can check it out yourself. Like I said, you'll find the link in the description to findadeath.com. There's a lot more fascinating details about Hollywood celebrities and singers if you feel free to, if that's your sort of thing. I wish I could last longer, but my throat just isn't in for it. Cam says, I got to hop in the shower. Catch y'all later. Have a good night, everyone. Good one, everybody. Good night, Cam. Take it easy. Yeah, same to you. Peace. And Jim says, night, Cam. Real Weight Nation Gaming Clips. Hello, new to my channel. He says, hi, welcome. And I'm sorry, you got here just as I was closing. My stream's usually gone for hours and hours. Last week, my horror stream, I think, went on for 5 or 6 hours. It's just that my voice is kind of weak tonight, and I apologize. Tomorrow night, we will be doing the Lost in Space stream. Hopefully, I'll sound better then. I'm going to take some cough syrup and maybe a pain pill or two, and I think I'll feel better for tomorrow night's stream. But in the meantime, everybody, I apologize for cutting this short. Hope this wasn't too boring. If you liked what you saw or listened to, please check the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it already, and select alert notifications. I want to thank everybody personally in the chat for coming and spending some time with me. I really appreciate it, guys. I know this was a strange subject, but I've been promising a few people that I would be covering this website soon because people have been asking me. My next Rumblings from the Lab, I think I'm going to cover like UFOs and stuff like that. That's another thing that I like. If you're into that sort of thing, you feel free to join me. It'll probably be next weekend. I want to dig up some links and some videos and pictures of it before I do the stream because you don't want me to waste my time looking for all that stuff live on the air. Also, you guys will notice that there's been links popping up in the chat that promotes channels. Please check out everybody's channel if you get a chance. Everybody's wonderful and they have some great content to share. Team tag, LOL. Vampire says, hello, Real Wade. Herb 130 says, yeah, I feel terrible. It's still early. Vampire says, looking forward to UFO one. Yeah, I think it'll be fun. Sean Carter said, that will be great. Herb 130 says, Skinwalker Ranch is interesting. Yes, it is. And there's a recent documentary on it that I downloaded. Wish I could go visit and stay the night there, actually. But I'm sure that's not possible. But like I said, if you guys want to see me cover this topic in future streams, let me know. If not, feel free to go to the website yourself, findadeath.com, and you'll find a lot of references and things that I didn't show. Like I didn't show the dead bodies and stuff like that. But I think you'll find it fascinating. I know I always did. But with that, I wanted to tell everybody, thank you for, like I said, thank you for spending time with me. I'm sorry I don't feel better, and my voice isn't quite there, but I'm working on improving it. I really appreciate you spending time, and I know a lot of you have to work tomorrow. I hope it's not too late for you. But like I said, if you're available tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be doing Lost in Space. On Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. No, sorry, 7 p.m. Pacific time. No. Oh, I'm tired. Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be doing Forbidden Planet on the horror sci-fi stream. And then Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be picking up Gilligan's Island. We're on the second season of that. So I want to thank all of you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry, like I said, that I'm not a little bit louder. My voice is like it is. But I promise next week I'll sound better. So with that, have a great night, everybody. And like I said, drive safe tomorrow. I know a lot of you have to work.